Here's a psychology fact you might not be ready for. Your brain does not actually want you to change your life. In fact, every time you try to drastically overhaul your daily routine, promising to wake up early, exercise, and transform into a completely different person overnight, your nervous system registers that sudden ambition not as inspiration, but as a severe biological threat. Psychologists understand this as an acute avoidance response. And once you understand it, you will finally see why your grand plans always seem to completely collapse by Wednesday afternoon. If you have spent years caught in this exhausting cycle of starting and stopping, quietly sitting in the dark and blaming yourself for a fundamental lack of willpower, there is a reality you need to face. This deeply frustrating struggle has absolutely nothing to do with laziness. When you attempt to change everything about your life all at once, your mind does not see an inspiring new chapter. It sees a massive, terrifying disruption to its emotional equilibrium. It is simply protecting you from the overwhelming unknown, pulling the emergency brake to keep you safely within the boundaries of what is highly predictable. This quiet internal panic is the exact psychological reality behind the concepts James Clear explores in the book Atomic Habits. He reveals that to build real momentum, we have to entirely bypass the brain's built-in threat detection system. We do this through micro-habits using the 2-minute rule and habit stacking. By shrinking a massive goal down into an action so small it feels almost insignificant, you stop relying on the fleeting emotion of motivation and start silently rewiring your identity. Over the course of 60 days, these incredibly tiny, low-friction actions bypass your mental resistance and completely fix your baseline routine. The first micro-habit is drinking a single glass of water the exact moment your feet touch the floor. You do not need a surge of morning motivation to drink water. You are simply stacking a tiny biological reset onto the inevitable action of waking up. By attaching this new behavior to something you already do every single day, your brain does not view it as a demanding new chore. It simply accepts it as part of your existing environment. Habit number 2 is smoothing out your blanket or making your bed the second you stand up. This is not about achieving a perfectly pristine, military-style room. Psychologically, this is a 2-minute visual cue that signals safety to a dysregulated nervous system. When you create immediate external order, your anxious mind receives a subconscious message that the environment is controlled, safe, and ready for the day. The third microhabit is reading just one single page of a book while your morning coffee brews. When we try to read an entire chapter, the sheer volume of the time commitment causes the brain to freeze, plunging us into a state of cognitive overwhelm. By capping the expectation at a single page, the mind lowers its defenses. The fear of failure completely vanishes because the action is simply too small to fail at. Habit number 4 is leaving your phone charging in an entirely different room before you go to sleep. This is the psychology of environmental design. It does not require you to suddenly develop ironclad willpower against morning scrolling. Instead, it creates a physical space where indulging in the distraction requires far too much biological effort for your tired morning brain to pursue. The fifth microhabit relies on that same psychological trick, setting your workout clothes on the floor right next to your bed at night. When the alarm goes off, your energy reserves are at their lowest, and the brain instinctively seeks the path of least resistance. By removing the heavy cognitive load of decision-making, you bypass the morning mental negotiations that usually lead to self-sabotage. Habit number 6 tackles the terrifying prospect of exercising by committing to just one single push-up or a 60-second stretch right before stepping into the shower. This perfectly utilizes the 2-minute rule. You are tricking the nervous system into movement without ever triggering the protective fear of physical exhaustion. Once the body is in motion, the mind usually allows you to keep going. But the only requirement is that single, safe first step. The seventh microhabit acts as a powerful psychological anchor, taking 3 slow, deep breaths right before opening your laptop to work. This is not just a calming technique. It is a neurological reset that takes you out of the fight or flight response, signaling profound emotional safety to the body before you step into a highly demanding, stressful digital environment.
Habit number 8 prevents cognitive freeze by writing down just one single priority task on a sticky note. When we stare at a massive to-do list, the brain often panics and triggers an avoidance response, causing us to endlessly scroll the internet instead. Isolating just one task creates a tiny island of predictability. It gives the wandering, anxious mind a very specific, safe place to land. The ninth microhabit protects us from evening ego depletion by washing just one single plate immediately after finishing a meal. By the end of the day, your prefrontal cortex is exhausted, and the urge to abandon all responsibilities is at its peak. Washing one plate bypasses the overwhelming dread of a completely full sink. It is a microscopic victory that demands almost zero mental energy, preventing the visual accumulation of guilt. And the 10th microhabit brings ultimate closure right before sleep, writing exactly one sentence in a journal. It is not about deep, profound reflection or writing pages of perfectly articulated thoughts. It is a quiet, low-stakes reinforcement of your identity. You are proving to your own mind that you are someone who finishes what they start, even in the absolute smallest of ways. But here's the part nobody tells you about these tiny, seemingly insignificant actions. The reason these 10 micro-habits eventually compound into entirely new lives over the course of 60 days isn't just because of the simple mathematics of repetition. It is because of what those impossibly small actions do to your internal narrative over time. As we move through different stages of life, the way our brain interprets our own behavior begins to subtly shift. When we are younger, our goals are so often tied to proving ourselves to the world. We want the radical, overnight transformation because we are desperately seeking an immediate shift in how others perceive us. But as we age, the psychological weight of our daily habits begins to evolve. We slowly stop craving the explosive, exhausting overhauls. We begin to seek emotional sustainability. We start to realize that the way we spend our ordinary, quiet days is the way we spend our entire lives. A tiny habit suddenly stops feeling like a frustratingly slow stepping stone to some grand, distant future. It starts feeling like a quiet, daily commitment to the person we are right now. We stop trying to outrun ourselves, and we finally start learning how to walk alongside ourselves. And this is the hidden, beautiful truth about the microhabit. At its absolute core, it is not a tool for endless optimization, and it is not a weapon for relentless productivity. It is a profound mechanism for emotional regulation. When the world outside feels loud and chaotic, when our anxieties are running high and the future feels entirely out of our grasp, a tiny, predictable action acts as a grounding anchor. It becomes a familiar, quiet room you can step into when the noise in your head gets too loud. Choosing to do one incredibly small, positive thing, even on the days when absolutely everything else falls apart, restores a tiny, vital fragment of control to a dysregulated nervous system. It becomes a psychological blanket. It is a gentle reassurance to your mind that despite the chaos, you still have agency and you are still safe. So the next time you find yourself staring up at a mountain of expectations, feeling entirely paralyzed by the vast distance between where you are and where you think you are supposed to be, just take a slow, quiet breath. You do not need to suddenly transform into a machine of flawless, unbroken discipline. You are simply a human being,
living with a mind that is trying its absolute hardest to keep you safe in a highly unpredictable world. Allow yourself the grace to be small. Allow yourself the permission to take one quiet, incredibly unremarkable step, because the goal was never really about fundamentally changing who you are. It was simply about learning how to stop fighting yourself and finally finding a way to feel grounded, secure, and at home in your own life.